Well, good morning. West Coast, Midwest Coast, some folks hanging around from the East Coast still. So this is version 2 of the very first residential sales broadcast. I have my good friend Victor Antonio here with me today. Victor, say hello.
How you guys doing? Glad you're here. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. So to kind of jump into the content a little bit, the idea with these meetings and what we hope to do in the coming months is to bring one of these broadcasts to you each month. We've got a residential focused broadcast that's happening today. We did one earlier at 8:30. The good news for you is we had a couple faux pas, but we got those fixed, we think. So you're getting the second version, the corrected version. So that's a good thing. And then we've got a commercial set that we're going to do next week as well, dedicated to our commercial sellers. But we will focus on our residential sellers today. The goal is pretty simple. Just to share some ideas, maybe some best practices that might help you in your day-to-day getting after it and staying busy. And just why is Victor here? So Victor, as many of you know, I think some of you are familiar with him. You've seen some of the videos that I've done with him. Victor, in my mind, is the best sales guru out there today. He probably hates when I call him that. But as many of you know, I consume a tremendous amount of content, and I watch them all. And we've contracted with Victor to do these kind of things for our team because I think he's just the best guy out there. So Victor, just a couple minutes on you, and then we'll move on to what we want to talk about.
All right, a little background. You can find all my information. Just search Victor Antonio. You'll find me. My background is sales. Love selling. I've written 14 books on sales and motivation and leadership. You can check those out online, but more importantly, they're in the Sales Velocity Academy, which we'll touch on. And I think this is going to be a great session, Ed.
Absolutely. So to kind of kick things off, we've been doing really well.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
We've been clocking it.
Residential. Right?
Now we're not getting a lot of cooperation yet with the pests on the residential pest control side.
Okay.
But our termite folks are pretty much clocking it.
Are they doing it?
They're getting after it.
When you say clocking, what does clocking mean?
They're like growing the business at like 15, 18, 20% nationwide as a whole.
Nice.
On top of 20s, like 20% gross in a row.
Really?
For a mature company is pretty awesome.
Is anybody making money? That's the question.
People are making money.
All right.
And funny that you mentioned that. I've got a short video here that's going to share with you. So we have Victor, we have in Orkinland, we have what we call the perfect mile, where a salesperson would go out and they would sell $100,000 in any particular month.
Wow.
And we recognize that and we high five and we do all that. But I have always been, my background in sales here, 17 years I did what these cats do out there. My background has always been, I don't really care what I sell. Now there's a couple sales managers on the call or on the broadcast that care what people sell. I always worried and was concerned about what I got paid on, right? So you can sell it all, but what's important is what are you getting paid on?
Take home, baby, take home.
Take home pay. So we've got a short video here there's something spectacular happened last month. In April, we had 29 salespeople get paid, residential salespeople get paid on over $100,000 of production.
Now, is that a record?
It's a record for numbers.
Gotcha.
Numbers.
Wow.
For numbers.
Wow.
So, Stormy, why don't you roll the video and we'll share the names of those 29 folks that just slayed it.
Wow. That's a big number.
What do you think
That's
of that?
a big number. 203,200. Who is this guy?
Philip Williams out of Tennessee.
Phil, call me. Let's do lunch on you. Those are amazing numbers, man. Those are amazing numbers.
Yeah, so the impact of just those 29 folks, I want to make sure we kind of get a grasp of that, right? That was April's production that they got paid on. It was over $3.5 million in services produced, right? We did the actual work and we got paid on it. Those 29 folks made $497,000 in commissions alone in April.
That's just commissions alone?
Just commissions alone.
That's
average. 14% commission on $100,000 is $14,000, right? Just at the very bottom level. and I think we pay you like $1,000 a month in salary,
Right.
and they could run a few re-inspections, they can make a little bit of money.
Wow.
But you're talking about, Cliff Brown put it in the chat, life-changing money. I
Yeah,
mean, it
that's big
literally
money.
changes lives.
Yeah.
The cool thing about that is that 3 of those folks have been here less than 6 months. So you can start that fast here if you choose to.
And that's in a month.
In a month.
Damn, those are big numbers.
15,000 a month.
Those are big numbers, man.
And just perennial folks at the top all the time. And I think the coolest thing about it is that
That's great.
it's like not just in certain pockets. You know, I get that all the time. Is it, you know, oh, he's in a better territory, he's got better turf, he's got better this. And I can promise you, for as long as I've been here since 1983, it has never, ever, ever, ever been the land. It's always the Orkin Pro.
Gotcha.
So you can take it from New England all the way out to the West Coast, and all those, as Jason L. Dean talks, those flyover states,
Right.
representation of $100,000 in production out of 14 different regions in April.
Look, if you can sell in Oklahoma, you can sell anywhere.
Amen. So again, just wanted to share that with you. We'll
right.
continue to do that as we move
Yeah.
through these broadcasts. And your goal now is to get your name up in lights. I know there's a handful of cats out there that I know very well that are just kind of, they're not real happy that they're not on that list.
No.
Right, Rory Alligato? And I'll just leave it at that. So he'll be there next month, I'm quite sure.
What's up with Roy?
Roy-
We have a bone to pick with Roy?
I
here?
don't understand. I don't know how he didn't make it. Roy's always there.
Roy?
You know, he's always there.
I don't know.
He must have took some vacation or
That's
something.
what I'm thinking.
Must
yeah.
have been.
Yeah.
Must
yeah.
have been.
Way to go,
Must
Roy.
Might have went to Hawaii
Yeah.
or Vegas or something
Yeah.
like that.
Slacking.
But just a couple things, and Victor's here for a reason. You all have received a link to the Sales Velocity Academy, and if you've not received that link yet, what I need you to do is to reach out to your RSM and get them your email address. So it's an email. I kind of try to keep a distribution list together that I share with Victor's team so that we can get you access to it. It requires a username and a password. Most of you have probably already had it. If you haven't, today's note is to get with your RSM and the RSMs, please get me those email addresses so we can get you in the system and get you the username and password. But here's what I wanted Victor to do today, just kind of a teaser. When I first got access to it, I was, quite frankly, overwhelmed. I mean, there's just like so much stuff. There's like 500 videos in the thing. All of his books are in there, all that kind of stuff. So what I asked Victor to do today is just give a brief little teaser to kind of let you know what's out there. So go ahead, kind of explain that a little bit if you would,
Will
please.
do. All right, so I'm going to walk into the academy is called the Sales Velocity Academy. So if you go to salesvelocityacademy.com, that's how you land on this page. You'll see that beautiful individual right there. If you go to your upper right, obviously there's the login button. You should have gotten your login information. And here's my ebook library, so if you want to download any of my books. But more importantly, here's the Sales Velocity Academy. You'll see it says the 7 P's of selling. So you click on that, and it will take you in to the 7 P's. As you see, if you want to be better at process, there's that series. Pricing, prospecting, product IQ, delivering messages, positive mental attitude, how to stay positive, persuasion, one of my favorite. If you want to get better at presentations, and this is important to know, every month I have something called Victor's Inner Circle, which is where I just answer questions live. So you now have access to that. So again, you should receive something in the email letting you know that next week we'll be doing it, Victor's Inner Circle. But let me just show you real quick. Let's say, for example, you want to become better at persuasion. You click on that button, and you're going to see all the different courses in here. You got Inside the Customer Brain, one of my favorites, Blocking Objection, definitely the favorite, Closing the Credibility Gap, so forth and so on. So if I click on, let's say, Inside the Customer Brain, here you see the course itself, and then you can just go through each of these courses. And Ed, it's that simple. It's that simple to get into access.
Yeah, and here's what I love about it. I mean, the videos, even though that one little course you put in there, there were like 12 or 13 videos in it. They're all like 3 to 5 minutes long. What's
Correct.
the longest video that you've got?
I think it's 23 videos, and I think maybe it's an hour long, but the majority are about 30 minutes at most.
Yeah.
So easy to consume.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about it is that we've had some sales managers get involved and some branch managers get involved in launching the training. And I got an example out of Tennessee, Sam Burke, the RSM down there. He launched this live with his team. And his intention was to just click through like 3 of the videos. I don't know.
Right.
I don't even know what course he picked. But his intention was, I'll share 3 of these videos today with the team, and then we'll save it for tomorrow or next week or whatever. When he got into that and he started doing that, the salespeople were saying, they were just like clamoring for more. Well, just go ahead and show the rest of them. So
nice.
So the content was was attractive enough that the salespeople wanted to stay on a sales meeting longer.
Love it. Yeah.
That's kind of weird, right?
That is weird. That is.
That's
but
weird.
you know, it's the way I designed them is they're short videos. It almost builds momentum. You know, if you watch a 3-minute video, like I can do one more.
Yeah.
And then they go to the next and next. Next, you know, they're done with the course. So I'm glad to hear this. Good news.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
news. Great news, actually.
Absolutely. And just if I had to recommend a couple or one of them, I would literally start with the blocking objections. I mean, I would tell you to get into that course first, because I think that's kind of what Victor hung his hat on, and that's what really attracted me to Victor, you know, more than 10 years ago when I started bringing him, when I was in the Northeast division, running the sales for the Northeast. What attracted me to Victor is, you know, I'd been managing the same people forever. The salespeople had heard my message, blah, blah, blah. Here comes Ed again. He's going to talk about this. He's going to talk about that. So some of you know I'm pretty much a YouTube kind of content junkie. So I said, I got to find something else. I got to find somebody else to talk to my team. And I popped into YouTube, found Victor, and the blocking objections is the lead piece that we used. We would bring Victor in for the advanced sales courses, and he would lead with that. So I can promise you, since 2011,
right.
I have not had a customer tell me that your price is higher than the other folks. And it's for simply one reason. That objection always came up for me, so that's the one that I mastered on blocking. So I've already beat the customer to the punch by telling them we're going to be more expensive and positioned it away, not knocking on the door and saying, hey, we're going to be more money, but using the blocking objections to take it out of the way. So that would be my first recommended course, I think.
I would have to agree with you. It's a great course because, you know, we have to deal with objections all the time. And we've been taught from Sales 101 that we should always overcome the objection. In there, I talk about the psychology of why that isn't the best strategy. Preempting or blocking the objection is the best strategy that you're going to need. Now, what's great about this course is that you got the videos, but there's also a book that goes with it, which has about 22, maybe 23 of the most commonly used objections you're going to get. I've written out scripts for you. All you have to do is go in there and organize them and use them and apply them. And I'm telling you, you will learn this blocking objection system, your sales will increase. Guaranteed, not a maybe, not kind of, will.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the other cool things about the academy is it depends on what kind of learner you are, right? You know, there's some folks that, you know, I kind of lean towards video, but I've picked up some habits of starting to read books lately, right?
Yep.
You know, I kind of re-engaged that habit.
Sure. And
And some folks like podcasts, and you serve all of them up.
Correct.
Inside the academy. So if you learn by reading and taking in the content, you download the blocking objections book and you take it from there. Or if you want to consume the video, you can do it there. So I think that's one of the cool things, and I think the biggest luxury that we have in presenting this academy to these folks, that you can learn how you want and you can learn at your own pace.
Yeah, and like I said, it's consumable, and maybe just I would recommend, Ed, you tell me if you disagree, but I would do like maybe one course a week.
Yeah.
You know, don't overdo it. You can't overdo it. But just do one course a week. Just go in there, look at what you think you need, and begin to set a schedule one course a week. And again, at most, 30 minutes per course. So that's really the only commitment we're asking here.
Cool, absolutely. So we promised that we would talk about, I don't know, I think it's a stall. Some folks call it an objection. I want to think about it. That dreaded, you know, you do your deal, you get up there and you get done with your spectacular, perfect presentation, and that dang customer, that potential client says, I want to think about it.
Yeah.
And we want to kind of do a couple things. We want to talk about certainly kind of what's going on in the customer's mind. We'll probably tackle that first. Maybe talk about some things that we don't want to do. We don't want to fold up our tent and say, okay, you know, call me back later. You know, When can I call you back? How long will it take you to think about it? What we want to try to do is introduce some concepts that give you a professional approach to that makes sense. And there are, as I've mentioned, there are 50 or 60 of these guys and gals out there trying to make a living doing what Victor does. And if you Google right now on YouTube, or not Google, but if you go into YouTube and say, I want to think about it, every one of these characters will put up their response, and they'll tell you what you should say. I kind of tend to lean towards Victor's. You kind of got to make it your own, but just think through that a little bit. I mean, like, if you do that and you put up Jeffrey Gittimer, the old-time dog, the old-time sales guy, he'll tell you, oh, it's something you did. You screwed up. You didn't do what you were supposed to. That's why they want to think about it. I don't necessarily agree with that approach, but I think let's talk about that. And because I think that's the real meat and potatoes. I think that's where a lot of our proposals end up. Particularly our creative proposals. You know, when we get out there and they got termites flying or they got a pressing issue, we're going to get a decision. Right. But I think where we end up a lot of times with our creative proposals is, getting that I want to think about it, and then they go radio silent. They ghost
you.
They ghost
Totally
you.
ghost you, yeah.
You're gone, right? And you're not even mindset. And I think let's talk through why that's happening, what's going on with the customer, and then let's talk about.
Love it, love it. You know, there was a study that was put out by Corporate Visions. I thought it was really interesting. They looked at the closing rate for different market sectors, right? And what they found is on average across different markets, that the close rate is 40%, right? 40%, which means you didn't get 60%. But then they did something interesting. They looked at that 60% and they realized that 60% of the 60%, 20% went to your competitor, which leaves you with 40%. And where did that 40% go, Ed? Nowhere. No decision. In other words, something held them back. And in many cases, we didn't cover something in the presentation. We didn't make them feel comfortable. So if you're going to get the I'll think about it, we have to be able to know what that is. So what I want to do now is go through two scenarios, Ed, unless you want to add anything.
The other thing I would add is that I think too many times what I've seen is when you hear that I want to think about it, either they fold up their tent and they go home, or they get really defensive. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's like, oh my God, well, why aren't you buying? What did I do wrong? The old puppy dog thing, like, oh, there must be something that I didn't cover, there's something that I missed. And you start, you get nervous. And I think when somebody says, I want to think about it, you got to get to the point where you're practiced and rehearsed with what Victor's going to share with you so that it comes across like, I get it, right?
Yep.
Don't put that wall up, because as soon as you throw that wall up and start to attack, which I've seen way more times than handling it correctly, you're sinking your ship.
I've seen that. What do you want to think about?
Yeah. I said I want to think about it.
Let me go out to the car. I'll be right back while you think about it.
Well, I might have done that once or twice back in the day. Like, okay, you guys want to think about it? Let me go out way back when. Let me go out and catch a smoke in the car, and I'll come back in after you two have a chance to kick it around. There's a few folks that can pull that off these days, but that's just not a professional way to do it. Let's talk. Let's go
ahead and think about it. So this program, by the way, is going to be in the Sales Velocity Academy, so you'll get access to all the different objections. But this program is called Client Says, and this is a guide to handling different objections. Now, in this session here, we're just going to do one, which is what Ed already teed up, which is the client says, "Let me think about it." Man, you just gave your stellar presentation, and they said, "Let me think about it," and they're not interested. And the conversation may go something like this. Jim, Jane, when someone tells me, this is you talking, the customer says, "Let me think about it." You say, Jim, when someone tells me that they have to think about it, it's usually because they're not interested, or they're interested but not sure. Which is it? And at that point, the customer has to give you a response. Now, I want to pause here, Ed, because this is where you're giving them an option now. And you're almost giving them an out also. If you're not interested, let me know, because we can end this right now, so to speak. But if you're interested, that's even better. But what we're doing is funneling them by having them make a decision.
Yeah, you're asking for just a yay or nay. I think oftentimes when you get that I want to think about it, I don't want to be too crass here, but I think it's sometimes they're never going to buy, and they just don't want to be mean to you.
Right.
They just, they're pretty good folks, and they don't want to insult you, right? They want to say, I'm never buying from this cat.
Right.
So they just the easy way out is I want to think about it. In the first broadcast, she shared the story about having to buy a suit, and I think a similar story is like when you walk into a department store and you're looking to buy something, even though you got to go buy a white shirt and it's got to be this size, you know what you're walking in for. Mm-hmm. They hit you at the door. They say, "Can I help you?" And I'm just looking. You're not just looking, right? But I think what happens when you get to that point with the I want to think about it, you got to figure out what it is, because if it's they're never going to buy from you, that's great news to know. So you don't string it along. You can put it behind you, maybe learn something from it, but then move on to the next one.
That's exactly it. It's funny how people don't, no's are good. Believe it or not, in a weird way, they're good, because you can move on to somebody who'll say yes. So let's say this person says they're not interested. Client says, "I'm not interested. I'm really not interested." At that point, they've made a verbal commitment, they've taken a position, and the chances of you changing their mind go to very low numbers. In other words, not probable. But then at that point, you can ask this question. At this point, you're done. Stick a fork in yourself, you're kind of done, but at least you can walk out and say, before you walk out, "May I ask why?" And the reason this is important is that the customer's already said, "I'm not interested." And once they say that, the chance of them changing their mind, again, is probably very low. So at least you can walk out of there, Ed, with an understanding of what might have happened. So when you go to your next call, you can clean up your act, so to speak, and maybe do it differently. So That's the not interested. So now let's go to the other option. Same thing. Client says, let me think about it. Jane, when someone tells me that they have to think about it, it's usually because they're not interested, or they're interested but not sure. Which one is it? Again, I'm funneling them into making a decision.
Forcing an answer.
I'm definitely forcing an answer, but I'm actually putting two options on the table, and all they have to do is pick. By the way, the fact that all they have to do is pick is low cognitive loading. What does that mean? They don't have to think about it. They just have to make a choice, yes or no. When you tell somebody, well, what do you have to think about? Well, now they have to run through their brain and try to figure out why they don't want to buy. But when you just say, is it this or this? Which one is it? It's a simple choice. So in this case, let's say that they say, no, I'm interested. Victor, I'm interested. I just want to think about it, right? And then you just lean into that thing. You say, I'm glad you're interested. You always reaffirm their decision that they're interested, and then you begin a new funneling process. You say, it's been my experience that people that need to think about it usually do it for one of three reasons or one of three things. The first one is they maybe don't find this product or solution as a fit. Is that it? So Ed, organize this for me. Add some flavor to this thing.
So it may be you pitched a $15,000 bundle and you got a whole bunch of pieces in there, and maybe there's one of them that they're really not interested in, right? Maybe they'd like to see it with something else, but they're just going to push it all the way so they can try to figure it out in their own mind. Or maybe there's something that's missing that they were served up by another competitor, right? So I think you pin it down that way to kind of flush out what may be that lingering piece that isn't making it that fit,
right,
where it doesn't seem right. The solution isn't working for them, and once you pin that down, then you can track it down and then pin it back down.
So if they say, for example, no, Ed, the solution's right. The solution's right. Everything we wanted is in there. Then you dig a little deeper, go for the next one. Well, they say the product is a fit, which means the solution's a fit. But maybe there's something in one of those solutions that maybe they're not vibing with or like. So, well, maybe there are some features that are missing, or maybe we didn't include. Is that it? Now we're getting into specifics. Organize that for me, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, is there something that we missed, right? Is there something that's missing in this solution?
Right. Something very specific,
very specific.
Whatever it may be. And again, you guys will be able to adjust this any way you want. Let's say that the customer says, no, it is a fit. The product solution's there. Everything you've highlighted for me is exactly what we're looking for, just what I need. And then you say something like this. Well, if the product is a fit, the solution is a fit, and we have all the features that you need, then I'll have to assume, and here's where you make the assumptive. I have to assume it's price. Is that it? Now you're there. They got to talk about pricing at that point. And they're going to say something like, it's more than I expected to pay. Well, now we got to the real issue. Now, you can also deal with that objection by going back into the Sales Velocity Academy and reviewing that video series on that one. So we're not going to cover that. We're going to go up to here. So at this point, I want to highlight something, Ed, because this is important. If the product is a fit, the solution is a fit, all the features are there, and it's not a financial problem, right? They go, no, it's not the money. It's not the big, it's a good price. It's a fair price. I've looked at other competitors in the market. It's a fair price. And if they still don't want to buy, even after you talked about finance, then the fourth F is fear. There is something you said, something you did, something you show or didn't show that is holding the customer back. Okay, and so we have to kind of figure out what that is. Now, I can't give you a solution for that. You have to kind of analyze your presentation. Maybe there is something that you missed. But when the customer will typically say, it's more than I expected to pay. Is that a fair assessment?
Very fair.
Okay.
Very fair. And I think sometimes what will happen is, as you're going through this, as you're presenting, it may trigger them to think, boy, I maybe need to get another bid.
Right.
Right. And so you can flush that out if you funnel it down. But too often times, I think that sales folks, they kind of go fishing for the real objection.
Right.
So they just kind of hit them with the batter, a litany of, well, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this?
Oh, it's got to be irritating. Is this? Is it this? Is it this?
Well, if it's not that, then it's got to be this. But I think when you use that process to funnel it down, you let them drive to the conclusion, and you're not telling them, right? I mean, they're telling you.
Right.
You're not guessing, I guess, is the better way to put it.
That's a good way of saying it. I like your visual. If you have a funnel, just think you got three options. You're down to two, down to one. It has to be this. Right? And if it isn't that, it's fear.
Yeah.
So I love that funneling process. And again, if you use this process using your verbiage, that's why I want you to organize this thing. In other words, how you sound, how you would say it. But the method itself is solid. It is a winner.
Yeah. And it's clunky, right? It's going to be clunky when you first look at it.
Wow.
You know, I asked for feedback on the group meetings, and I'll do the same thing with you folks when we finish up, and we'd love any feedback that you have to get shared back. But from the first session this morning, you know, a lot of the folks say, you know, usually I just fold up my tent, and I ask them when it's a good time to call them back, when do you think you'll have made a decision, you know, which is you know, that's not what we're paying you for.
Don't do that.
That's not what we're paying you
Don't do
for.
that.
We're paying you to stay in the game. Even the Brian Worsts of the world aren't going to close everything the first time. But I'll bet you he gets a pretty good idea at what's going on with that customer, because we know if you leave without some sort of commitment that they're going to do business with us, your chances drop. Even for B. Worth, his chances drop. It's going to drop a little bit. It may not drop like mine would, but it may drop a little bit when you leave without a commitment. So this just helps you get there, I think. And again, it'll be clunky when you first look at it and you start scripting it, and well, I can't say that, but it's really simple if it's practiced. And I think that's, you know, you folks that are out there in meetings in your branches today, practice it. I mean, like as soon as we're done with this thing, practice. And I think we need to talk a little bit about the tonality and how the approach is, because when you first read it, you can come across gruff, but it's got to be like, you know, butter smooth, right? I mean, it's got to be practiced to where it just flows, because, you know, you want to stay away from that attack where you're coming after them, right? Like, I want to think about it, and you're jumping down their throat. You know, think about some of the experiences that you've had from sellers when you say you want to think about it, and really you just want to throw the bum out, right? You know, you just don't want to hurt his feelings. Or you do, there's something you do want to think about. Maybe it's the finance. Maybe, hey, I'm just trying to figure out how to pay for it. You know, I don't know if I should take some money out of the credit union or the 401k or sell some stock. I'm trying to figure out how to pay this, but I think you alleviate all that if you use REC the right way. But I think what we have to understand, that I want to think about it, is not really an objection. It's a smoke screen, and you really gotta, I guess, funnel to isolate what the objection is, because if you don't ever get there, you're never going to be able to handle it, right?
By the way, it's important to note that is not a real objection.
Yeah.
Let me think about it is not a real objection.
Yeah.
Too expensive, that's an objection.
Absolutely.
Let me think about it is not a real objection. And so I want to highlight that we have some more of these. Oh, by the way, we have to remind them, if you're a salesperson and you end your presentation on pricing with, what do you think? You've just primed them to say, let me think about it. So don't do that. Don't do that. So anyway, this is the only objection we're going to cover today in this session, but I also want to emphasize that these are all the other objections that we cover in the courses. So again, in the course rather. So number 10 says, let me think about it. What's the other one? That one of my favorites that I think I've come up with at least a good way of dealing with it is, I need to speak with my spouse.
That's blasphemy.
Before decide. I know.
You can't say that in Orkin.
Okay, sorry.
There are no one-leggers at Orkin.
No,
we don't put ourselves in that spot.
Okay,
it does happen maybe once in a blue moon.
Okay, and by the way, number 14 is also interesting. I'm happy with my current supplier, which is the competitor. That's more than I expected to pay. I give you script for all of these. So here's how you do it. Here's how you use this program. You go to Sales Velocity Academy, obviously, but before you do that, first, figure out what objections you're having problems addressing. Like pick one or two to start out with. Let me think about it, might be one. And then number 2, review the script that I provided and then rewrite it in your own words so it sounds natural, or an edge word, smooth like butter, right? And then step 3, this is the important part, memorize the script, practice it until it sounds so natural that it's just like having a gentle conversation with your client.
Yeah, and I would encourage you as well. You know, we've done this whole rebranding of the Orkin Man, the Orkin Woman to the Orkin Pro. I would challenge you to become a professional salesperson. And if you think about it, anybody can play golf, anybody can play tennis. It's pretty easy to know the rules. You know, 25 to 28% of the termite leads that we get in this company, they don't call anybody else out. They just buy. If you show up with the diamond, you don't kick the dog or do something stupid, they're going to buy. What we're paying you for is to handle these things when people say they want to think about it. And you can't wing it. You can't wing it. You got to be practiced. And that practiced professional, you know, my bet would be is all the Chairman Club winners that we've got on this call, they may not be scripted, but they pretty much say the same thing every time, you know, with different verbiage, and they work through it. So if you're not working off a script, if you don't write these out and organize your scripts for these approaches, you're cheating yourself out of money. You're cheating yourself out of money. You know, tennis pros, they have coaches use your coaches, practice, practice, practice. Be the Orkin pro. Don't just be an Orkin salesman. Be an Orkin pro. We want you bringing it the best.
I love it. I was taught, never practice on your clients.
I love that line.
That's a great line.
That's like a sin, right? To practice. I'm going to go practice.
That's right.
So role play. So you folks that are in a branch, role play. If you pick up the phone and you're a sales manager or branch manager today, and you're talking to one of your salespeople, why don't you, when they call you, why don't you just pick up the phone and say, Kevin, I want to think about it, and see what he says. So start to practice amongst yourself, amongst your team. You guys, it's just awesome what's going on out there. You're all being really successful, but get to that next level by practicing becoming a pro.
I think if you can master blocking objections, especially this one, you'll be able to move the needle up on your close rate.
Amen. Yeah, and again, the feedback coming off the first broadcast was, almost all of them said, usually they fold their 10 up, and again, it's different. It's really honest.
Let's change. It's honest.
So we would expect the same from you on your group meets, particularly the ones that have the group meets and your chats that you've got out there. Post a takeaway so you can share it with your team members. Just checking through my notes. Smoke screen, I got that in there. Tone and practice. There's a lot going on with tone, and maybe we'll dig into tone as we get further in these broadcasts. Not what you say, but how you say it. All that kind of crazy crap stuff. What's going on in customers' mind, I think you got to focus on that. Why are they there? And I think at the end of the day, if they tell you they're not interested, I think that's like a breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. So you stop waiting for the phone to ring, and you can clear the deck and move on to the next one, because we're not going to sell them all. Right?
I think when you're the power behind memorizing these scripts and being able to sound natural is that people can pick up when you don't sound confident. And you look at the young salespeople, by young I mean those coming in, that's what they lack. That's where they're struggling. They don't feel comfortable in saying it. So as a manager, what I would do is I would really train hard on the role playing. As you say, pick up the phone, call one of your salespeople, give them the objection, and role play. And the interesting thing about role play, I'll say interesting, is that it's awkward. It is so awkward to role play with somebody but yet the effects are very powerful. And I think a lot of sales are lost due to a lack of confidence in being able to deliver the right line at the right moment when an objection is present.
Amen. Amen. And I know a bunch of the regions on this broadcast in particular are engaged with the practice app. I would encourage you to script this thing into the practice app and have Ed Kerr work through this process. I want to think about it so you can start practicing on that. Anything else? We're pushing time. We want to keep these 30 to 45 minutes, so we're in pretty good shape. I do have a couple housekeeping things that I want to cover with you real quick. There's a bunch of you in the hunt to make that rack trip. I guess we've got, 3 days to close out May, and then we got that last final push in June. So, punch your ticket to New Orleans and get after it. And then, for the little faux pas we had, President's Club, we're 5 months in to the President's Club run as well for another trip to New Orleans. I had nothing to do with that, so don't blame me, don't call me. We're going to go back to back to New Orleans. But as with last year, the way that we flipped a deck on how the President's Club sales period runs, just realize that November and December aren't the best catch-up months. So you want to make hay while the sun's shining now, get after it, give yourself a little bit of cushion so you can get out there to President's Club and have a great time, and don't get. You used to be able to catch up in May and June. You used to be able to catch up. Now you can't catch up. Don't play that catch-up game in December and January, or November and December. The other thing, if you're not involved in the 401k, please get involved in the 401k, particularly when you're making money like you're making money. Typically as a young guy, raising 4 kids, I would move my 401k around a little bit when I had the better months, better seasons. I would bump it up a point or two and then take it back down, just to make ends meet. Think about doing that as you make these big commission checks. And the other thing that's brand new, that if you're not aware of it, there's been a whole bunch of bulletins that have gone out, but we're going to launch June 1st through 17th an open enrollment into a stock purchase program that you can do right out of your paycheck that is way different than the current one that's out there. They're going to put that one to bed. You are literally going to be able to buy Orkin stock at 10% below the lowest cost of that stock. So it's an immediate 10% win. And those of you that have been Orkin stockholders, it's done, or Rollins stock, it's done pretty well. Mm-hmm. So think about that. That's a very unique benefit that I am going to take full advantage of as we move forward. So take a real hard look at that. Other than that, keep killing it. We'll be back at you in another month or so. We'll get that invite again. We're going to continue to work through this process. We would love to hear what you want to say. So what I will do tonight in an email out to all of you, maybe not tonight, but probably tomorrow, is I'll attach these broadcasts. We're recording these, obviously, and then we'll ask for some feedback on what would you like to see next. What do you want us to kick around next? Maybe it's a deeper dive into this, but at the end of the day, want to wrap this thing up and get out of here?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, go make money, go sell, go serve, do your thing. How's that?
Amen. Continue to be different, separate yourself from the competition, and go get busy. All right, thank y'all. There's Roy. Roy's getting excited now. See y'all.